This is the fourth professional development session for the Keystones to Opportunities training entitled Successful Transitions Along the Literacy Continuum. This segment of the presentation is devoted to examining transitions that support students as they move from the middle grade span into high school, whether that be within the same building in 612s or between buildings. It's recommended that you first view the introductory segment to the Successful Transitions presentation, which can be located on our website or on YouTube at the links which have been provided. Again, the intent of this training is to help you define the vertical and horizontal transitions that occur in the 9-12 grade span and between the middle grade span and high school, to identify those transitions that exist in your particular school, to evaluate routines to support successful transitions that you already have in place, and to determine areas of need that may need to be designed and enacted to support a more successful transition. This also informs the work of a school-based transition team, which will eventually create a transitions plan for your school. Again, this presentation is to give you an awareness of the elements of successful transition and not to initiate, at this point, the work of that team. Materials that you should have on hand for this presentation include the notes pages for this PowerPoint, as well as chart paper, markers. If you're viewing this independently, you might just want to have a notebook to jot down ideas during times when a suggested pause occurs for you to do some thinking on your own. To set the stage for this work, it's useful for you to recall your own experiences and feelings as you prepared to enter high school for the first time. It's often a time of excitement, but also a time of nervousness, even terror for some students. For decades, the movement of students from one grade to another and one school to another was considered routine and unremarkable, sort of a rite of passage that you got through on your own. And often the first time a student saw their new school was on the first day. But research is now showing that through positive transition experiences, we can not only set the tone for a year, but an entire academic career. The more extensive and supportive transition programs are throughout a school year, the more people who are involved, especially parents in the community and teachers, the more likely students are to complete high school. Some studies indicate that this experience, this transitioning, can make or break an academic career. And so many elementary and middle and high schools across the country are now working together to ensure transitions are more flowing and less jarring. We have some programs in place already at Pittsburgh Public Schools, some powerful programs and teams of people such as the PRC and Ninth Grade Nation, and keep those in mind too and how they fit into successful transitions also. So as an 8th grader approaches the end of their middle school career, we have to think about their readiness and what was happening in the middle grades to get them ready for the expectations and the rigors of high school. Glenda Beeman, in her book Sparking the Thinking of Students, aged 10 to 14, says that accountability, expectation, and challenge are what shape 7th and 8th graders for high school, not just support and making them feel warm and safe. So while reassuring students that everything will be all right is important, and again, harkening back to the earlier key points of information and relationships, where they have information about what it will be like as they go into 9th grade, and somebody on the other end who they have a relationship with and someone to go to help them. What's important is that throughout their middle grade experience, they've been challenged. They've been held accountable. High expectations have been held for them as well, so that when they do reach the more independent work expected of them in high school, they're ready. So what's being said here is that certain skills need to be instilled and certain work ethics need to be instilled, as well as just a perception that they will be doing fine once they make this transition. To give a context for the importance of transitions in the high school grade span, let's take a look at some statistics that come from betterhighschools.org. Take a look and see what you notice. The following statistics highlight a trend in the lack of progress of many students throughout freshman year. During the ninth grade year, many students are actually held back, creating what is known by researchers as the ninth grade bulge, and drop out by 10th grade, which they call the 10th grade dip. And we can see that here. Students in ninth grade comprise the highest percentage of the overall high school population because students in disproportionate numbers are failing to be promoted out of ninth grade. Promotion rates between ninth and 10th grade are much lower than rates between other grades. The ninth grade bulge is illustrated by the following numbers. Enrollment figures show 4.19 million students enrolled in ninth grade during the 2003-04 school year, while figures for the following school year show enrollment numbers for 10th grade at about 3.75 million, a loss of 10.5%. And these statistics come from the NCES, a 2005 study. The dip in the number of students in 10th grade reflects both the large number of students not promoted to 10th grade, as well as those that drop out after 9th grade and therefore 10th grade. In the last 30 years, the bulge of students in grade 9 has more than tripled, from approximately 4% to 13%. Researchers at Johns Hopkins found that up to 40% of 9th grade students in cities with the highest dropout rates repeat the 9th grade, but only 10 to 15% of those repeaters go on to graduate. Ninth grade attrition is far more pronounced in urban, high-poverty schools. 40% of dropouts in low-income high schools left after ninth grade, compared to 27% in low-poverty districts. Racial disparities highlight the ninth grade bulge and 10th grade dip. These figures are the most pronounced for African American and Latino students. For example, grade 9 enrollment is 23 to 27% higher than grade 8, and attrition between grades 9 and 10 hovers around 20% for African American students. For their white peers, grade 9 enrollment is 6 to 8% higher than grade 8, while attrition between grades 9 and 10 is stable, around 7%. 29 of 51 states see their greatest loss of students in the educational process during the ninth grade. Some states have as high as 20% decrease in enrollment between 9th and 10th grades. Most high school dropouts fail at least 25% of their ninth grade courses, while 8% of high school completers experience the same difficulty. More than one semester fail in a course subject and fewer than 5 full course credits by the end of freshman year are key indicators that a student is not on track to graduate. Low attendance during the first 30 days of the ninth grade year is a stronger indicator that a student will drop out than grades alone. All of these statistics are available in the notes pages of this PowerPoint, which have been distributed to your buildings, and they bear a closer examination and comparison to your own school's statistics. There's a high correlation between a student's perception of school and their engagement and their likelihood to drop out. Dropping out has been described as a slow process of disengagement from school. Students that have a successful transition are more likely to have achievements in ninth grade and to attend regularly and not drop out of school. Students who have failures that are in part due to a lack of readiness and a lack of transition are much more likely to start to become disengaged, to see their school experience as not relevant, and to feel that school has a negative impact on the way that they perceive themselves. So it's key that these transitions involve engagement and involve making the student feel as though what they're doing in high school is important and exciting to them. We can look to the business world for an analogous model of the effect of engagement on achievement. The corporate world offers us a view of an employee engagement model in which strong relationships between the employee and the organization, the employee and the employer, and the employee and the customer, and the employee and the work combine to create a productive and profitable business in which employees remain with their companies rather than choose to look elsewhere for a better fit. If we view this model through the lens of education, we can say that student engagement has promise as a driving force in creating high-achieving schools in which students persist through graduation. The focus is on strong relationships. You might want to pause the presentation now to discuss the types of relationships and the array of relationships, strong positive ones, that are essential to keeping a student attending. After thinking through some of these key relationships, take a moment now to examine what's available in your school or schools that you're familiar with within your district, or ideas for other ways to create a process for building these successful relationships. Doing this is part of the planning of a transition model for your own school and for the district. So jot down, either individually or with your group, how positive relationships can be established in an intentional way through the forming of some sort of organizations or programs within your school. Now compare your thinking with some of the tried and true plans that have been helping ninth graders transition nationally. First, there's the idea of creating a smaller learning community. New high school students are more likely to find their academic and social bearing in a smaller learning community. In elementary and middle school, students interact more with the teachers because they are with them more frequently. In elementary school, sometimes the same one or two teachers all day. In middle school, we tend to have, in our district, students move in small groups. Their homeroom group transitions through the school day with a few exceptions. How, if at all, is this done with ninth graders, and how can it be done? Ninth Grade Nation in our district is a wonderful start. PRC is also a wonderful start. Are there other opportunities for this so that students can find their academic and social bearings more easily upon transitioning into ninth grade? Another practice that many schools have found successful is that they group ninth graders together in one physical setting, almost like having houses. And this is done in some of our high schools as well. It helps when ninth graders occupy the same physical space, especially when the building is large or the campus has more than a few hundred students. New ninth graders find it easier to get to classrooms, and proximity with classmates encourages social bonding and support. Also helps us keep track of where they are. A third method is to use mentors. Some high schools have a buddy system that pairs new ninth graders with a 10th or 11th grader. Mentors go through a training period, and then they check in with their ninth grade buddies regularly all year. This is so much more supportive than what in the past ninth graders may have experienced at the hands of 10th and 11th and 12th graders. The ritual of hazing or initiation is the antithesis of a successful transition. Advisory groups or mentoring groups are also a supportive practice, and I know that from my own experience, I've been in schools that initiate these to greater or lesser success throughout the year, sometimes keeping the consistency or keeping it moving um, through the spring can be a challenge. But belonging to a group of about 15 that meet regularly with a faculty advisor helps students better manage their high school transition. Whether the group consists of only ninth graders or includes students from upper classes, it can offer a haven in which to build relationships and get academic guidance and support. The way teachers design classroom activities to connect with their students personally is perhaps one of the most powerful ways to help students feel successful and to ease a transition. To new ninth graders, high school classes can seem intimidating at first, and it really helps when a teacher starts the year by showing interest in getting to know students and helping them to get to know each other. These bonds often continue after graduation, and building these can be one of the more rewarding parts of teaching. These do happen, but to have them actually be systematized in some way so that there are activities or events where this can occur rather than just happening in some classrooms and not others would be part of a transitions plan. We all know as teachers and can remember as students how hectic a school day can be with a bell ringing every 42 or 43 minutes and transitioning from one activity to sometimes one that is very different. That segmenting of the school day also doesn't really serve as a supportive horizontal transition in a ninth grader's or 10th or 11th or 12th grader's school experience. For that reason, lengthening class periods to give students more time to learn can be a very supportive move in the design of a school day and be part of a transitions plan. In middle school, students may have grown used to longer blocks of time, and that is true in Pittsburgh, where, for instance, in communications, we go from a 90-minute block to often a 43-minute period in ninth grade. The typical fast-paced high school class period may not offer enough time for kids to understand a concept or practice a new skill, prompting some schools to revise and simplify their schedules. Students are asked to do things much more quickly. They might not be ready for that. That transition may be too abrupt, and the failure that might occur academically because of this rush is enough to have a student start to distance themselves and lose engagement, which eventually could have dramatic outcomes. Another strong support for transitioning ninth graders is to establish fair classroom norms and enforce them consistently. And we all know how difficult this is, especially when there's a large faculty, and we all know how destructive it can be when the consistency begins to drop off. But new ninth graders have the early adolescent's need for order and structure in the classroom, but they also have the older teenagers' passion for fairness and justice. They want to participate in setting classroom norms, and they resent it when unruly students take up all the teacher's attention. So having these norms set, having the students participate in designing them and the consequences for breaking protocols can be a very empowering, engaging start to a school year. And consistency in follow-through, again, is essential. Another aspect of the time crunch that students experience upon entering ninth grade can be ameliorated by offering students extra help in and outside of class. It's especially important to offer individual support with both classwork and homework so that ninth graders don't fall behind and get discouraged. One approach builds time into the school week for supported study groups or tutoring. And there are schools in our district too who have periods set aside where students meet with their teacher for that subject on a rotating basis for extra help. Anytime a student can be caught before they fail is or become discouraged is an opportunity to increase their likelihood of graduating. As was mentioned earlier, engagement is highly correlated to a student's likelihood of graduating. And so there needs to be time during the school year to have students engage in things they care about. Time has to be set aside for activities where students can do things that are meaningful with other adults and other students. Their identity as part of the school community grows stronger and more important to them too when this can happen. So service learning projects are a really nice way to start carving out time where students do something that they find is real, meaningful, relevant, and therefore increase their engagement and positive perception of their school. That can make the difference between a student who decides to stay in school and one who does not. Students have a lot of mixed emotions about transitioning from the middle grade to the high school grade span. Some of it's excitement, some of it is fear and anxiety. If you think back to your own thoughts again about this, I know that I was extremely worried about getting lost, which I tend to do a lot. I was worried about forgetting my locker combination. I was worried about forgetting my schedule. And to this day have dreams where all those things are still happening, anxiety dreams. So it must have made a difference. It's natural for students to have these concerns related to procedural, to social, and to academic changes associated with this transition. Many of concerns will dissipate within the first few weeks of school, while others can last into the second semester and beyond. As we know, we always have students who still can't quite get their schedules down, who still go to the wrong class if there's any kind of alternate bell schedule. During the last year at the middle level, educators can do a lot to help prepare students for a successful ninth grade year by addressing their concerns associated with the procedural, social, and academic changes. So we're talking about a collaboration really between middle school educators and the high school educators who will be receiving their students. You might want to take a moment now to pause the presentation and jot down or talk about some of the things that you have experienced, some of the things that your school may do or be planning to do. Maybe your own students have experienced some of these transitional supports for the changes. What do we do to get kids to relax and to feel comfortable before they walk through the doors? As we first take a look at the procedural changes, there are many things that schools do and that you can plan to work into your own school's transition plan, such as having students take the time to examine the bell schedules and map of the high school, making those available to them before they walk through the door, perhaps online or in a mailing, or at least as they walk through the door on the first day. You can make arrangements for students to tour their high school, and many schools do this. Many schools also have ninth graders show up a day before the rest of the upperclassmen so that they have the school to themselves and are less afraid of making mistakes and keeping up their image in the presence of older adolescents. You can have students practice procedural tasks like moving through a bell schedule, similar to the high school bell schedule, before they leave middle school. So you could have a high school day in middle school where you follow procedures that they will be encountering in the high school that they are likely to attend. And that could be a fun collaboration between the staff of the two buildings. Uh, One idea would be to invite the administrators and some of the teachers to sort of swap out for the day and walk the students through a typical high school day, and answer some questions. Again, information and relationships. So you want to give them as much information that is pertinent to their anxieties, and you want to make sure that they have at least one face, one person that they can count on to help them out if need be when they enter the school. Um, Other things, including making sure that they have a handbook, perhaps creating some activities around the handbook, scavenger hunts to find key information. You could host a panel of high school students to talk about how they overcame procedural concerns and to answer questions. It's always been thought to be a great activity when we can have, for instance, a graduating senior come back and talk to the current high school students in their high school about what it is like to be out in college or starting a career, things that they wish they had known when they were in high school. So having somebody come and do a panel discussion or a talk who is from the other side can be extremely valuable. Apart from the procedural changes, of course, we know that adolescents are highly social animals, and so these transitions can be equally, if not more, stressful for them as they transition to high school. Social changes primarily center on peer and teacher relationships, along with extracurricular involvement. Students are concerned about keeping their middle school friends, making new friends, and establishing positive relationships with their high school teachers. The perception of whether or not a teacher is approachable, whether they care for, like, whatever, that we know is from multiple measures, training can impact student achievement greatly. Students also want to know about various extracurricular opportunities, opportunities for them to build social networks outside of the academic school day, and what's available at their high school and how to get involved. Many schools have activities directors. They could become an integral part of a transition plan at the ninth grade level. There are many ways that middle school educators as well can assist with social transition changes. One idea would be to have the students look through the high school yearbooks of the high schools that they are about to transition to get an idea of the variety of extracurricular activities available and the school spirit, the school culture, and so they can start thinking ahead of time of what they might like to be involved in, who are the people associated with those clubs, with those sports, with those activities, and you could even help them to get in contact with the sponsors or coaches that that they run into through this information. You could also host an extracurricular day for the high school coaches and club sponsors to visit the middle grades and talk to them about expectations and that they have for members of their particular groups and some of the highlights of the things that they do. For middle schoolers, it's also a good idea to have some sort of rite of passage for at the end of the year to help them to celebrate the close of their middle level years and sort of a send-off. Perhaps they could do a time capsule or some sort of activity that leaves um, a permanent mark of their success in the community. In many buildings, you'll see murals, you'll see pieces of furniture or art displays that are dedicated to the class of um, whatever. And this can happen at the middle school level as well as at the high school level. And it it gives a sense of accomplishment and permanence to their time there. As we move on to the third category of change that students experience, We'll talk about the academic changes, which are often the ones that are primarily focused upon when we talk about transitioning from 8th to ninth grade or into high school. Academic changes center on the quantity and quality of work and the academic expectations placed on students at the high school level. Research suggests that many incoming high school students are very underprepared for the quantity of schoolwork, and they struggle to meet the academic expectations set by their high school teachers. They're not used to taking responsibility for their schooling, for not being reminded, for not being given multiple chances to turn things in. Middle grades educators can do a lot to help with to smooth over this transition, this academic transition. For instance, middle school teachers can have students examine samples of actual high school proficient work, such as tests, homework assignments, the textbooks, the level of difficulty, the complexity of the text. This is also a great idea to do with high school juniors in terms of exposing them to authentic freshman college work that is proficient and meets the expectations of schools that perhaps they're considering entering. This could radically change the way a student perceives their own readiness and give them a chance to act on it before they enter freshman year, only to find themselves in remedial courses because they aren't ready to read and write at that level. We can teach students academic life skills. Many middle schools already have kids using agenda books, organizers, but there are other skills that they can learn, such as how to work out problems interpersonally when they're in a group setting, to do some problem solving and proactive measures before problems occur, and to start accepting a larger and larger role in their own personal responsibility for their success. You can organize a high school curriculum or academic fair for teachers to share academic information, to give them a preview of texts and activities. There can be a vertical team of middle and high school teachers to focus on aligning the middle and high school curriculums. And at the district level, that's a central part of our comprehensive learning plan that speaks to transitions, is that alignment vertically of expectations in the content areas. The Common Core also supports this by having a very clear stepwise progression of skills and expectations K through 12. So as we conclude this 9-12 portion of the transitions presentation, we leave you to think and discuss whether or not you, as an individual teacher, or the processes implemented in your building are setting your entering ninth graders and horizontally through to 12th graders, are you setting them up for success? And are you doing the most you can to ensure that they won't, through failure, lose engagement in their academic careers? So we encourage you not to let the conversation end here, but to work with your colleagues to identify the transition processes and evaluate those that you already have in place, to suggest improvements or additions to the areas where you find challenges in the transition process. These include students with disabilities, English language learners, and those who move into your district during the school year. There will be a segment on these special populations and specific thoughts and suggestions for students who have IEPs, who are ELL, or who have a transiency situation that is impacting their academic success. Those will be listed on the website and the YouTube page as well, and the links will be provided. Thanks for your participation. Please be sure to sign the KtO PD sign-in sheet after having viewed and participated in this session, and be sure that it is sent to your KtO specialist. Thank you.